Welcome to the Parenting Tips Podcast. I'm Jeff Reiland, the host of this podcast series. In this episode, we will be discussing what it is like to parent with anxiety. How might it look from a parent's point of view? Equally important, how might it look through the eyes of a child? I like to say that a little bit of anxiety goes a long way. Too much anxiety can be debilitating. If you're a parent who experiences too much anxiety, I hope you will find information and parenting tools in this episode that will help. If you are just tuning into this episode on parenting with anxiety, I highly recommend you include episode 59, Parenting with Mental Illness or Addictions, in your listening and learning experience. Even though there are big differences between the illnesses described in this series, there is so much overlap in terms of what parents can say or do to help your child and to be the best parent possible for your children. In addition, episode 59 contains some of the very best resources for parents and for children that are linked in the show notes. So what is anxiety? Well, let's say that you're driving your car on the highway and you notice a bank of very big and dark clouds looming on the horizon ahead of you. You are driving into a storm. You may become more alert, aware of road conditions and other cars around you. You may grip the wheel a little bit tighter. You may try to cut down on any distractions to be able to concentrate on the road and the weather. And when you pass through the storm, you experience relief. You relax and return to a normal state of rest. I would call this normal anxiety, or anxiety with a lowercase a. We all experience this from time to time. It is temporary. And then there is too much anxiety, or anxiety with a capital letter A. These are the anxiety conditions that can be costly. They get in the way of life. There are several different types of anxiety, and they have names. Generalized anxiety, panic disorder, social anxiety, a variety of phobias or fears, and obsessive compulsive disorders that commonly occur with many adults. According to the National Institute on Health, these disorders have a variety of symptoms that include, for generalized anxiety, feeling restless, wound up or on edge, being easily fatigued, having difficulty concentrating, being irritable, having headaches, muscle aches, stomach aches, or unexplained pains, difficulty controlling feelings of worry, and having sleep problems, such as difficulty falling or staying asleep. For panic disorder, someone might experience a pounding or racing heart, sweating, trembling or tingling, chest pain, a feeling of impending doom, and a feeling of being out of control. For social anxiety disorder, someone might experience blushing, sweating or trembling, pounding or racing heart, stomach aches, rigid body posture, or speaking in an overly soft voice, difficulty making eye contact or being around people they don't know, and feelings of self-consciousness or fear that people will judge them negatively. For phobias or fears, a person may have some irrational or excessive worry about encountering a feared object or a situation. They may take steps to avoid feared objects. They may be experiencing immediate anxiety on encountering that feared object or situation. And they might be able to endure that object or situation, but only with intense anxiety. None of these symptoms sound very pleasant. They can be debilitating, and they can get in the way of job performance, making it through the day, and they can also interfere with relationships, including relationships with your children. This podcast episode aims to help you recognize if your anxiety is getting in the way of your relationship with your child or children and what you can do about it. As we go through the information in this episode, you may have some aha moments that give you inspiration and direction. I hope these moments and the tools from this episode move you in a positive direction that helps both you and your child. Remember the words of Maya Angelou, do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. Anxiety disorders are really quite common. It is estimated that 1/3 of our population will experience some form of anxiety in their lifetime. Becoming a parent doesn't reduce the chances of having anxiety. Some studies suggest that as many as 35% of all parents experience anxiety starting during pregnancy, with many parents being anxious throughout their children's childhood or the child-rearing years. When it comes to raising children, there is so much to worry about, but excessive worry comes at a cost. Sometimes worry can be debilitating. What does your anxiety look like? Are you indecisive? Are you often irritable and grumpy? Do you try to control every possible outcome only to be frustrated by things you have no control over? Does it affect your sleep, your appetite, your ability to enjoy life? What does your anxiety look like to you? What does it look like to the adults in your life who recognize you may have anxiety? What does it look like to your children? There is this thing called normal worry. Remember, normal worry is anxiety with a lowercase a. It's quite common for parents to worry about their children. When babies are born, they seem so fragile. They cough, they run a fever, they seem uncomfortable. We worry about them. As children grow, we want the best for them. We want them to love learning at daycare and school. We want them to enjoy playing with other children. We want them to be safe from harm. All of these hopes come with a little bit of worry for the best. Do you know what your triggers are? If you have a normal amount of worry, great. If your worry seems excessive, exhausting, or all-consuming, consider what your triggers are. Is it tied to uncertainty? Is it related to situations or conditions you have limited information on or limited control over? Is it tied to past experiences that you've had and you're determined to help your child or children to avoid? If you have anxiety about parenting, what do you think is driving it? Consider how your worry may affect your children. Anxiety can affect the way you communicate with and raise your children. Anxiety has a genetic component and it has a learned component. This learned element is what your child sees, hears, and otherwise picks up in their world. Parents are the first, best, and longest lasting teachers for children. From cradle to adulthood, parents interact with their children daily. How could they not learn from you? Kids learn through modeling what they see from you. What are you worried about? Children are like little sponges absorbing everything they notice, and they notice lots of stuff. If you are overly worried about the weather or about things safety related, they notice. Give some thought to the kinds of things you worry about and how that affects your choices and your words or actions. Do any of these choices have an effect on your children? Remember, a little worry goes a long way. Parents who have a little worry are very often able to anticipate and prevent problems from occurring. This is a good thing. But if the worry is excessive and it prevents the activity or the experience from ever happening, this can be an unfortunate thing. Does your worry lead you to being overprotective? When a parent is overprotective, they can make it difficult for children to experience those normal, everyday activities that help children to develop and grow their social and emotional skills. Being what has been dubbed a helicopter parent, constantly hovering to keep their child safe, or a lawnmower parent, always clearing the way in front of the child to create a seamless and problem-free experience, comes with some hidden costs. While it can be frustrating to stand by and watch, it is important to recognize that trial and error is one of the best ways for children to learn. Young children build something with blocks or other materials, and it falls down, and they build it again and again and again. Sometimes they get frustrated. Sometimes they say, I can't, or I don't know how. This is common. Trial and error is how children learn. They try new ways to get something right. They learn to keep at it. They learn to persist. If your anxiety prevents you from stepping back and letting your child struggle a little to better learn, you may be making it more difficult for them to master something more important than building a block tower. What kids are really doing is laying down the foundation of expectations they have of themselves to keep at it. We can call this resilience or determination. We want our children to have this quality in life. Repetition, trying and trying again, can have a positive effect on a child's confidence and development. When children persist and keep at it, especially a new task, they have a greater chance of mastering it. This can help them to develop confidence and a willingness to stick with a challenge instead of giving up. If a parent hovers and makes a challenge much easier, the child does not have to struggle to learn. In a beautiful story told by writer Annie Dillard in Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, she relates how as a young girl, she and a group of friends had noticed a moth struggling to emerge from its chrysalis or cocoon. They decided to help it by cutting the cocoon open. The outcome was not good for the fledgling moth. Dillard would later learn that all the thrashing about inside the chrysalis, the struggle to emerge, was actually a critical part of the moth's survival because that intense activity was what helped the fluids in the moth circulate into the wings so that it could fully develop and fly. It's important for children to try new things and to make mistakes and fail and then figure things out. Kids need to have setbacks and failures sometimes in order to learn how to be successful. That does not mean that they have to fail at everything for extended periods of time, but a little bit of struggle can be very powerful and help children learn qualities like determination and persistence. Having anxieties as a parent can set up arguments and conflicts daily with kids. When kids want to explore and parents try to limit this excessively, the word no to keep children safe is much more commonly used. Please see episode 29, Saying No, for more information about how to reduce this. As children grow, there's this natural drive for independence. Yes, parents need to be mindful about what is developmentally healthy and normal for children. And it's also important that parents with anxiety balance how much of their limit setting is based on their own anxious thoughts and worries and how that creates friction for their children. There are some important strategies to consider if you're an anxious parent and you think it may be getting in the way of being an effective parent. First, tell your children about your worry. You may worry about how they'll respond. You'd be surprised to learn that most children already sense that something is going on. They may even blame themselves. Giving your anxiety a name and saying that it is not your child's fault can be a huge relief to them. For young children, keep it simple. I worry too much, and it sometimes gets in the way of me being the best parent or person I can be, versus I've been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. It can be really helpful for your child. Kids may ask questions. You may not know the answer. Here's a great opportunity to tell them about the Great Question Book, introduced in episode 30 of this podcast series, that both honors a child's question and gives you some time to find the answer. There are a bunch of things you can do to take care of yourself. Eat healthy, get quality sleep, exercise, find time to take breaks. Do something for yourself without your child. Develop interests that bring you joy, reading, gardening, crafts, helping others. Find ways to stay calm and relax. Music, yoga, breathwork, being in nature. Talk with your medical provider or mental health professional if you need a little more guidance. Consider what tools you have learned or used to successfully manage your own anxiety. Here is a short list you may be familiar with. Staying calm, taking a break, taking deep breaths, using positive self-talk, using distraction. All of these tools can also be shared with your child. So please share them so that they know what you do and what helps. Learn to tolerate distress. Instead of awfulizing, you might ask yourself, what are the chances? Track how frequently the things you worry about actually happen. Practice mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Great question. One way to think about mindfulness is having the ability to live fully in the present moment by focusing on the present, not thinking about the past or the future. It involves paying attention to your five senses and learning not to judge yourself. Mindfulness can be wonderfully freeing in helping you to manage anxiety, but it does take practice. There may be an upside to having a little bit of anxiety. As I mentioned near the beginning of this episode, a little bit of anxiety can go a long way. When it comes to having anxiety, you may be in a pretty good place to recognize when your child starts to develop some of those early signs of being anxious, because you know what it feels like to be uncertain or to have uncertainty. You're in a better place to recognize this in your children and to encourage your child to keep at it. There are big differences in knowing something and mastering something. There's a great resource on talking with your child about anxiety and how to parent with anxiety from emerging minds. Please check out the link to this resource in the show notes. Also, the resources from the Temple University Collaborative on Mental Health and Parenting, listed in episode 59 show notes, are really useful for parents looking for ways to parent more effectively. To recap, if you struggle with anxiety, remember a little bit of anxiety goes a long way. Too much worry is exhausting. Step back and consider how your anxiety is affecting your life, and then how is it affecting the quality of relationship with your child or children. If this is a concerning area, consider doing something about it. Take care of yourself. This may mean getting help to manage your own anxiety. Make a list of situations or conditions that seem to trigger excessive anxiety and how it affects your children. Does it limit your activities with them? Does it make you more irritable or controlling? Does it lead to arguments? Make a list of all the strategies you already know work to help you manage your anxiety. Talk with your child or children about your anxiety. Give them limited information depending on their age. Give your kids strategies to cope when you are too anxious. Thank you for tuning in and considering this parenting topic. I hope this information added to your growing toolbox of parenting your child or children. Please consider exploring other topics in this series. Remember, no one parenting tool can do everything. We need many tools to become the best parents for our children. Your children's future depends on you and the time and effort you invest in them today.